The Singaporean economy is widely regarded as one of the world's most successful, with a strong emphasis on innovation, efficiency, and competitiveness. The country's economy is highly developed and diverse, with key sectors such as finance, trade, manufacturing, and services driving it. Singapore has consistently ranked high on a variety of international indices, including the Global Competitiveness Index and the Ease of Doing Business Index. The government has played a critical role in the country's economic success, investing in education, infrastructure, and innovation, as well as creating a business-friendly environment that attracts foreign investment. Singapore has managed to achieve sustained economic growth over several decades despite being a small island city with limited natural resources, with a per capita GDP that ranks among the highest in the world. Singapore was a British trading port in the early 19th century that grew rapidly due to its strategic location and excellent harbor. The port quickly became an important hub for trade between Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, and Singapore quickly became one of the world's busiest ports. Spices, tea, textiles, and opium were among the goods that fueled the port's expansion. In 1819, the British established Singapore as a free port, which aided trade growth and attracted merchants from around the world. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, the port continued to play an important role in Singapore's economy, and it is still an important part of the country's economy today. Singapore's economy was primarily based on trade and manufacturing during the 1950s and 1960s. With few natural resources and a small domestic market, the country relied heavily on exports to drive economic growth. Singapore became an important trading hub due to its location at the crossroads of major shipping lanes, and the country focused on developing its port infrastructure and transportation network to facilitate trade. During this time, the manufacturing sector began to expand, with a focus on labor-intensive industries like textiles and electronics. The government actively encouraged foreign investment to help develop the manufacturing sector, establishing tax breaks and other incentives to attract foreign firms. Overall, the 1950s and 1960s laid the foundation for Singapore's later economic success, as the country established itself as an important center for trade and manufacturing. Singapore gained independence from Malaysia in 1965 and embarked on an ambitious economic transformation plan. At the time, the country faced numerous challenges, including high unemployment, low levels of education, and a scarcity of natural resources. The government recognized that Singapore's economic survival was dependent on its ability to develop a competitive and innovative economy, and it implemented a series of policies to that end. The government focused on key sectors such as manufacturing, trade, and finance, and heavily invested in education and infrastructure to support these sectors. To attract foreign investment, the country also created a pro-business environment with low taxes and minimal bureaucracy. These policies contributed to Singapore's transformation into a highly developed and prosperous economy with one of the highest per capita GDPs in the world. Overall, Singapore's economic success since independence is a testament to the country's strong leadership, strategic planning, and willingness to embrace change and innovation. Later in the 1970s, Singapore's manufacturing sector experienced significant growth, with a focus on electronics and petrochemicals. Since the 1960s, the government has actively promoted the development of the manufacturing sector, and this strategy began to bear fruit in the 1970s. Large multinational corporations such as Texas Instruments, Hewlett-Packard, and Motorola established manufacturing facilities in Singapore. Singapore's pro-business environment, skilled workforce, and modern infrastructure drew these companies in. During this time, the electronics industry in particular became a major driver of Singapore's economic growth, with the country quickly becoming a leading producer of computer chips and other electronic components. During the 1970s, the petrochemical industry expanded rapidly, with the establishment of several large refineries and chemical plants on Jurong Island. These industries contributed to the diversification of Singapore's economy and laid the groundwork for future growth in the manufacturing sector. Singapore also became one of the world's leading producers of computer components and semiconductors in the 1980s. Since the 1970s, the country has actively promoted the development of the electronics industry, and this strategy has continued to pay off during the 1980s. Singapore drew even more multinational corporations to establish manufacturing facilities there, and the government invested heavily in infrastructure and education to support the industry's growth. The country rose to prominence as a major manufacturer of computer components such as disk drives and memory chips, as well as a leading manufacturer of semiconductors. During the 1980s, the electronics industry was a key driver of Singapore's economic growth, helping to establish the country's reputation as a high-tech manufacturing hub. Overall, Singapore's economy experienced significant growth and transformation during the 1980s as the country continued to diversify and move up the value chain. Singapore shifted its focus in the 1990s to developing the services sector, with a focus on finance, tourism, and logistics. Singapore's government recognized that in order to maintain competitiveness and economic growth, it needed to move up the value chain and focus on higher value-added activities. The country already had a strong manufacturing base, and the government saw the services sector as having significant growth potential. To support the development of the services sector, the government invested heavily in infrastructure and education, and it implemented policies to attract foreign investment and talent. With the establishment of the Singapore Exchange and the expansion of the banking sector in the 1990s, the finance industry was a major focus. With the construction of new attractions such as Sentosa Island and the Singapore Zoo, the country also developed a thriving tourism industry. Furthermore, with the construction of Changi Airport Terminal 2 and the development of the Singapore port, Singapore enhanced its logistics capabilities. These efforts contributed to Singapore's position as a leading global hub for trade, finance, and tourism, as well as laying the groundwork for future growth in the services sector. Finally, in the 21st century, Singapore continued to invest in key sectors such as biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, and clean energy, as well as launch initiatives to promote entrepreneurship and innovation. Singapore's government recognized that in order to remain competitive in a rapidly changing global economy, it needed to constantly adapt and stay ahead of the curve. To attract top talent and promote innovation, the country continued to invest heavily in research and development in key sectors, and establish research institutions such as the Biopolis and the Fusionopolis. With the establishment of startup incubators and accelerators, as well as the launch of initiatives such as the SG Innovate and Startup SG schemes to provide funding and support to entrepreneurs, Singapore has also developed a thriving startup ecosystem. Furthermore, the government enacted policies to promote sustainable development and clean energy, such as the Jurong Island Solar Project and the launch of the Sustainable Singapore Blueprint. These efforts contributed to Singapore's position as a leading center for innovation, entrepreneurship, and sustainable development, laying the groundwork for continued economic growth in the 21st century. As a result, Singapore has established itself as a regional leader in innovation and entrepreneurship, with a supportive ecosystem that attracts both startups and multinational corporations. Several initiatives have been launched by the government to support these sectors, such as the Research, Innovation, and Enterprise 2025 Plan, which aims to accelerate the development of new technologies and solutions. With a highly skilled and educated workforce, excellent infrastructure, and strong economic and political ties to other countries, the country is also well positioned to benefit from the region's growing demand. Singapore's economy is expected to grow and diversify further, with a focus on innovation, sustainability, and competitiveness. And that's all for today's video. Visionomics. Signing out.